My daughter won't stop speaking to the spectators. My daughter, Ellie, is brilliant. She's only 6 years old, halfway through first grade, and already reading books that even I struggle with. She's a sharp kid, but she has some peculiarities. And listen, all kids are peculiar. One thing I've learned as a single father is that children are bizarre little creatures. They have imaginary tea parties with empty chairs, talk to their shadows, and insist that there's something hiding in the closet. It's all part of being young. But recently, Ellie has taken her quirks to a whole new level, one that I don't quite know how to handle. Ever since my wife passed away 2 years ago, it's just been Ellie and me. Raising her alone has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do, second only to standing beside my wife's casket. Ellie was 4 when she lost her mother, and she took it hard. She would cry for her at the smallest inconvenience, sobbing in grocery stores and parks, wailing for a comfort I couldn't provide. I felt helpless. I did my best to reassure her that I was there, but a father can't replace a mother. The outbursts continued until a few months ago. At first, they dwindled to once a week, then once a month, then nothing. I was relieved. But then, something worse replaced them. Ellie started talking about them. She called them the spectators. It started at dinner one evening when I tried to introduce some variety into her diet. Instead of our usual mac and cheese, I roasted some vegetables. She eyed her plate warily. "You have to at least try them," I encouraged. She frowned, glancing at the window beside our dining table. It was dark outside, and the glass reflected the warm glow of the kitchen. But Ellie wasn't looking at herself. She was looking beyond the glass, into the night. "I have to ask the spectators first," she said seriously. I furrowed my brow. "Who?" Ellie didn't answer me. She just stared at the window for a long, silent moment. Then she turned back and shook her head. "They said no." I chuckled, assuming this was some clever ploy to avoid eating her vegetables. "Well, the spectators don't get to make the rules." Ellie's expression darkened. "Don't say that," she whispered. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she insisted that I leave the lights on. "The spectators don't like the dark," she murmured, clutching her blanket. I sighed but humored her. I left the hallway light on and cracked the door. I figured she would grow out of this phase, just like her tantrums. But I was wrong. The spectators became a daily topic. They had opinions on everything: what she wore, what she ate, even the route I took to drive her to school. At first, it was amusing, even endearing. Then things got unsettling. One morning, Ellie refused to go to school. "The spectators don't want me to," she insisted, tears welling in her big brown eyes. I forced her into the car anyway. 5 minutes into the drive, my tire blew out. Another day, Ellie mentioned that the spectators didn't like a boy in her class, Jonah, because he took the best swings at recess. The next day, Jonah tripped off the jungle gym and broke his wrist. Then, on a quiet Sunday evening, I found Ellie's favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops, torn to shreds. I asked her what happened. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "The spectators don't like him anymore." I tried to ignore the creeping dread building inside me. It was just a coincidence. Just a child's overactive imagination. That's what I told myself. Until the night I heard her whispering. I had just come back from the bathroom when I heard Ellie murmuring in her room. At first, I thought she was dreaming. But when I pressed my ear to the door, I realized she was awake and listening. "No," she said softly. "I don't want to. I love my dad." A chill slithered down my spine. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding. Ellie was kneeling on her bed, facing the window. The curtains were drawn back, exposing the pitch-black world beyond. "Ellie," I said carefully, "who are you talking to?" She gasped and spun around, her face pale. "Daddy, you shouldn't be in here." I stepped forward and pulled the curtains shut, my hands trembling. "Ellie, what are you talking about?" She hesitated, then burst into tears. "The spectators told me you don't love me anymore since Mommy died," she sobbed. "They told me to open the windows so they could come in and take you away." My stomach twisted into knots. "Ellie, There's no such thing as the spectators." She shook her head fiercely. "They're real, Daddy, and they're watching." That night, I lay in her bed, holding her close, whispering reassurances into her hair. She eventually fell asleep, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not after what she had said. Not after what I had seen. Because when I closed her curtains, I had caught a glimpse of something outside. Something pale and motionless. Something staring. Hours later, as I washed dishes in the kitchen, I felt it again. That prickling sensation of being watched. The kitchen window sat directly above the sink, a wide stretch of glass overlooking our dark backyard. My eyes remained fixed on the soapy dish in my hands, unwilling to look up, unwilling to confirm what I already knew. They were there, one by one. Their blurred forms emerged in my peripheral vision. Slowly, they rose, silent figures pressed against the glass, their bulging, unblinking eyes locked onto me. Their mouths gaped open, too wide, too unnatural, as if frozen in some endless, soundless scream. The spectators had arrived. I bolted, sprinting up the stairs, knowing I had to get to Ellie. I ran past window after window. Too many windows, my own reflection barely visible against the ghastly figures lurking outside. I burst into Ellie's room, breathless. She lay sleeping peacefully. That's where we've been ever since, hiding beneath her covers, waiting for dawn, if it ever comes. And if your child ever tells you they're talking to the spectators, don't wait. Run. A mysterious woman gave me a chilling warning, but it was a trap. I like to think I'm cautious. I never walk home with both earbuds in. I keep my location shared with my best friend, and I always lock my car doors the second I get inside. If I had been more diligent about that last rule, I might not be in the situation I'm in now. Last night, just past midnight, I sat in my parked car outside a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. I had picked up a late shift at work and was too exhausted to cook, so I stopped for a burger before heading home. The diner was small and lonely, its neon sign flickering against the otherwise dark stretch of highway. For some reason, I did something I never do. I decided to eat in my car. Normally, I'm hyper-aware of how vulnerable that makes me, but I wasn't in a hurry to go home to an empty apartment. Maybe it was the hunger, or maybe it was the weight of loneliness settling in after my recent breakup. I pulled up an old sitcom on my phone and unwrapped my food. I had barely taken a few bites when I heard a sharp knock on my window. My head snapped up. A woman stood outside my car, her arms waving in a frantic motion. I hadn't even seen her approach. She must have come from the alley beside the diner, though I had no idea why she'd been there in the first place. She leaned closer, pointing insistently at the ground, the universal signal for roll your window down. Yeah, no chance. She looked normal enough, clean clothes, no obvious signs of distress, but something about the way she moved put me on edge. I kept my hand near the gear shift, ready to bolt if needed. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Hey, there's someone in your back seat." My whole body locked up. Every urban legend, every horror movie, every true crime case I had ever heard crashed into me at once. I reached for the door handle, ready to throw myself out of the car before whoever was in my back seat could strike. But instinct made me hesitate. My car was small. There wasn't much space behind me. Wouldn't I have noticed someone before getting in? Heart hammering, I flicked my eyes to the rearview mirror. Nothing. I turned my head, scanning the back seat. Empty. Click. The sound snapped me back to the front. The woman was gripping my door handle, yanking at it, trying to get inside. I froze. Our eyes met through the glass. She smiled. Not a reassuring smile, not even a mocking one. Just wrong. Her lips stretched too thin, her teeth small and uneven. The diner's neon light cast shadows across her face, making her eyes look too deep, too dark. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as I pulled out of the lot. For a horrifying moment, she held onto the handle, her feet skidding against the pavement as I dragged her backward. Then she let go, stumbling into the street as I sped away. I didn't stop until I was home. Even after locking every door and checking every window twice, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the woman, about how she had tried to lure me out. Had she been alone? Were others watching from the alley? What would have happened if I had listened to her? I must have drifted off at some point, because when I woke up, it was to a rapid, insistent knocking at my front door. My stomach twisted. I glanced at the clock. 4:23 a.m. No one knocks at that hour with good intentions. I crept toward the door, every instinct screaming at me not to get too close. Then I heard a voice call my name. "It's Tom," the voice said. "Your neighbor." Relief flooded me. Tom lived in the unit across the hall. We weren't close, but we'd exchanged pleasantries. If something was wrong, I needed to know. "What's going on?" I called through the door. There was a pause. Then, "Do you have someone over?" My blood ran cold. "No," I said slowly. "Why?" Another pause. "I thought I saw someone in your window. Someone who didn't look quite right." A horrible, creeping sensation slithered up my spine. My apartment was on the second floor. My voice barely worked. "Tom, what's my last name?" Silence. Too long of a silence. Then, a shift in tone. "Come on," the voice said. "It's just me. Open up." I stepped away from the door. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Your dog," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. "What's her name?" Tom's voice faltered. When he spoke again, it was different, like he was trying to remember how to sound like himself. Bailey." Tom didn't have a dog. A new kind of terror gripped me. Was the real Tom still in his apartment? Or was he? The doorknob twisted. Slowly at first, then more forcefully. The door rattled against the frame as someone, pushed against it. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. My mind screamed at me to run, but to where? The thing outside was determined, but was I safer inside or out? Then, silence. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I crept to the window, peeking through the blinds. Down on the sidewalk, walking away, was a figure. I couldn't see their face, but I knew. It was her. She had followed me home. I haven't left my apartment all day. I've checked the locks a dozen times. I've checked the windows, too, but every time I do, I feel like she's just outside of my vision. Just waiting. I don't know what she wanted. I don't know if she was working alone. And worst of all, I don't know if she's really gone. If a stranger ever tries to warn you about something behind you, make sure to check what's standing right in front of you first. Woke up in the hospital, but nothing feels right. I know this is going to sound insane, but 2 weeks ago, I woke up in a hospital bed. They told me I'd been in an accident, hit by a truck while crossing the street. The last thing I remember is a flash of headlights, then nothing. Since I got home, things have felt wrong. Not just slightly off, deeply, terrifyingly wrong. Like reality is wearing a mask, and I'm the only one who can see the seams. I kept brushing it off. But today, something happened that I can't explain. And now I know for sure, this isn't just in my head. This is real, and I'm scared as hell. At first, it was just little things. I'd never been hospitalized before, so waking up in a stark, white-walled room with the smell of antiseptic lingering in the air was jarring enough. My parents were there, hovering, more affectionate than usual, but something about them felt rehearsed, too measured, like they were playing the roles of concerned parents rather than actually being them. But it was the drive home that set me on edge. My mom kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her expression cycling through emotions like she wasn't sure which one fit. But my dad? He didn't look at me at all. He just gripped the steering wheel, stiff and unmoving. Except, I knew he was watching me. I caught it in the mirror. Every time I met his eyes, he snapped them back to the road. But he never really looked away. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my skin was crawling. Inside, the house was dimmer than I remembered. The curtains were cracked open just enough to let slivers of light spill in, but never enough to fully illuminate the space. The air felt stale. My parents disappeared into their routine, Mom into the bedroom, Dad to his study, leaving me alone in the living room with a dull ache behind my eyes. That first night, I thought I was imagining things. The creaks on the stairs, the whisper of movement outside my door, the way the light from the hallway always seemed to be blocked, like something was standing just outside my room. I told myself it was nothing. But then, the grocery store incident happened. Mom took me out to restock the kitchen. That was normal enough. But the people at the store, every single one, kept staring at me. Not casual glances, not passing curiosity. Intense, fixed stares, like they were trying to memorize my face. Every time I locked eyes with someone, they looked away so fast it was unnatural. The worst part? I started to hear it. The tiny sounds of shoes pivoting on linoleum as we walked past, like they were turning to watch me from behind. But when I looked, they were always facing forward. I wanted to ask Mom if she noticed, but something in me hesitated. If she hadn't, I'd sound paranoid. If she had, I didn't want to know. The next few days, I stayed in my room, played video games, browsed the internet, kept to myself. But I could feel it, this growing sense that something wasn't right. My mom's movements became weirder. I'd hear her footsteps, always stopping outside my door. I'd glance over, expecting nothing. But once, just once, I saw them, her toes, just at the edge of the threshold. The moment I noticed, they jerked away too fast, like she knew I was looking. I lay frozen in bed, my heart pounding. This wasn't normal. I had to get out. I made plans to meet my friends at the old soccer field. Just a normal night, kicking a ball around, talking shit. The second I saw them, I felt relieved. Everything seemed fine. We played for hours. I let my guard down. I almost believed I was overthinking everything. And then, I saw their reflections. It was by accident. I tilted my phone downward to check the time, and in the dark surface of the screen, I saw them. My friends, standing behind me, wrong. Their mouths hung open too wide. Their jaws distended past human limits. Their eyes were locked on me, their heads tilted unnaturally forward. But their voices, still normal. Still laughing, joking, like nothing was wrong. My blood turned to ice. I dropped my phone. When I turned around, they were normal again. But I knew what I saw. I made an excuse and left. I biked home so fast I nearly crashed. When I got to the house, I ducked into the detached garage to hide my bike. That's when I saw it. My car, the one they told me was totaled, sitting there, pristine, untouched. I ran my hands over the hood, my breath coming in sharp gasps. It was real. It was here. And that's when it hit me. What else have they lied about? I rushed inside, only to hear shuffling upstairs. Something heavy, something deliberate. Then my mother's voice, too casual, too forced. "Honey, you missed dinner. Want me to heat some up for you?" I forced a smile. "No thanks, Mom. I'll grab something myself." I went to my room, locked the door, set up an old phone camera, hidden, aimed down the hallway. If something was happening at night, I was going to catch it. I wish I hadn't. Hours passed. Then I saw her, Mom, standing outside my door, swaying. Her jaw stretched impossibly wide, her lips pulled thin over gaping darkness. Her arms bent at unnatural angles, her fingers twitching, barely attached. And then, she whispered, "Honey, are you awake?" But her mouth didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The screen showed something shifting behind her, a shape lowering itself from the ceiling, its limbs unfolding like a spider. Dad. He crawled, silent, down the hall, stopping just behind her. If I hadn't been watching, I would have sworn he never left his room. They stood there, listening, waiting. Then, in perfect unison, they whispered, "Good night, son. We love you." I haven't moved since. It's almost dawn. If I can make it until daylight, I'm running. I don't know how far this goes, how many of them there are, but I know one thing for sure. The people in this house aren't my parents.